All right, good morning, everybody. It is Friday. It is Ravens football Friday. I got Zach Bollinger with me. Zach, what's going on, man? How you feeling?
How's it going? I am feeling great. We are one day closer to football, Ravens football. So, of course, we're doing better.
So we're gonna do all Ravens talk. We'll get into that in a few minutes, but I wanted to start off because I sit here, and because of my life, I'm basically married. And once 8:30, 9 o'clock rolls around, my fiance is a school teacher, so I end up
Mm.
watching baseball and football by myself. And now because it's on Amazon, flipping back and forth is just pain in the butt, right? So I
It's
had to,
way too big of a pain.
so I
Way
had
too
to
big of a pain.
so I had to make a decision on what I wanted to watch, and I can't tell you, Zach. It feels like the first time I picked baseball over football, like when it's not Orioles Ravens, right? Just from an entertainment
Yeah.
standpoint. I loved watching. Well, I mean, the Rangers game got out of hand after the fifth inning, but
Mhm.
both of those games so intense, so enjoyable. I'm just curious. Before we do Ravens stuff, how did you watch the games yesterday? And if you had to, I want to know what your experience was.
Yeah, I'm with you. I going into it. I'm usually a guy who sits there and flips back and forth, but I just could not sit there and keep going, waiting for the app to load up. All that. I actually enjoyed baseball way more than watching Derek Carr struggle to complete short passes and get the Saints offense going. I
Ugh.
mean, like you said, just the intensity of the playoff baseball. You had the walk off and first game with the Diamondbacks and Phillies. Then you had up until the fifth inning where it got blown up. Just a really intense game between two rivals with the Astros and Rangers. And then I'd flip over and I'd be like, oh, and the Saints and Jaguars still aren't doing anything fun. And so it was like, it became pretty easy. Well, once it was 10-3 for the Astros, I was like, I guess I have to watch football now. I was like, this game's over. But until then, I was on fully on baseball.
And you know what? From obviously people listening to gambling podcasts well, it's a gambling company. This podcast, as I told people last week, we're going to just really break things down from an analytical perspective. The Ravens game.
Yeah.
Zach's not a gambler. It's not his cup of tea. And I recommend people, oh, it's probably will sound a little funny saying this, but find your own Zachs out there for different
Yeah.
teams. Guys that are diehard fans of their own team, but that give a sobering, honest perspective, and that's what we're
Mm-hmm.
going to get into. But I wanted to point something out because there's certain games, and Zach, you watch them all. If you bet on
Yeah.
the Phillies Diamondbacks game, that's a 50-50 game. But the Astros Rangers is one of those games where there was a right side to be on. I am
Mm-hmm.
curious, how do you see it's Verlander Montgomery tonight? It's 5 o'clock. It's must see TV. That's got to be, it was 2-0 on Sunday night. I, I don't know. I said to myself beforehand, do not turn this into a baseball podcast, but I cannot wait to watch this game. So
I
before we do
can't
Ravens
either.
stuff, does Verlander win tonight? What do you think?
I think so. I think all the momentum is back to Houston, which is mind boggling that I'm saying that because, like you said, I didn't think the Rangers were losing until the World Series after they started 2-0. I just thought they had all the momentum, everything. And now it almost feels like Houston, it's their series to lose. So,
Is Javier the way and I get right, it's 50-50 game. The way that Javier pitched, it was like all that momentum. It's just that starter pitching, and I just feel though it could go either way. And right, like you break
yeah,
down these games, you watch every pitch. And the reason I wanted to put you on the spot like that, because I knew that, like, hey, you can't have strong convictions, Astros,
yeah,
Rangers, Phillies, Diamondbacks, when they're gonna have bullpen games. So if you're gambling, just know that you're gambling. These games
yeah.
they're the definition of 50-50 games.
Yeah. I mean, even we saw it yesterday in the Phillies game, two pitchers on low pitch counts just absolutely mowing through lineups, and then the managers take them out because that's baseball.
The
That's
Diamond
playoff baseball.
that Diamondbacks manager is going to give me a heart attack just watching the game. He can't trust. He has no trust. I wonder how he controls his family. I feel like he everything runs through him.
Yeah.
It's
I
amazing.
just
He micromanages things in a way that people think that high, you get frustrated sometimes with your own
yeah,
coaches. Just take a minute
and
to
they
watch
watch
them.
that.
Or the Saints coach last night. They can't get out of their own
Yeah.
way no matter what. Um,
Saints, oh man, the Saints are a whole different conversation. That's just an they like you said, they can't get out of their own way. Just every time they do something good, they just find a way to.
so I wanted to use that because as we go into the Ravens, one of the things we have to do, we just have to, and I feel like I'm going to be preaching here, but these games do not matter except whether or not
Mhm.
you win them until about week 13, week 14. You want to be playing
Yeah.
great football the last few weeks of the season. There's a few anomalies over the years where teams
Mhm.
weren't hot. The Giants strike me, 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
They snuck in. But generally speaking, you're playing good football in December. We can analyze everything bad that happens, but if you don't have the
Yeah.
perspective that we won the football game, you really
Hmm.
don't understand how a coach thinks, and you don't.
Yeah.
It's just so. With that being said, I'm happy we won. I'm not happy we went 1 for 6 in the red zone, but those things
Yeah.
are fixable. I wanted to throw something at you because I don't like talking about the same thing that everybody else is talking about. So
Mhm.
um, let's see if we can, add some knowledge here and help people figure out what this game's going to look like. There's two things that jump out at me from the Lions on a defensive perspective, and then I want to hear your thoughts. First one
Yeah.
is their defensive coordinator is Aaron Glenn. So for those that don't know, he was a former cornerback, and they are 30th in blitz percentage. Certain
Hmm.
statistics. So that's the thing I want to emphasize. There's certain statistics that after 6 or 7 weeks do not matter, meaning
Yeah.
it's based on the opponent, and there's just not a large enough sample size. The things that do matter are the tendencies from coaches, like what
Yes.
percentage on first down do they do this? What percentage on third down do they do that? So the Lions, are going to not blitz very much, similar to what the Titans
No.
did. I expect the Ravens to be relatively conservative. I think that's why the total is relatively low. So,
Hmm.
floor's yours. How do you think the Lions? Do you think that's what they'll do? And go ahead.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's going to be very similar to how the Titans tried to stop the Ravens. The Lions are very good against the run. Now, they haven't played the best run teams, but they are definitely a defense where they do not want it's Dan Campbell. They're not going to let you just run down their throat. So they're going to stop you there. And as I've seen a few times this week, make Lamar throw. So I, we see that mistake a lot. We'll see if Lamar can make them pay. But I do think Dan Campbell talked about everything that the Ravens do great starts with Lamar. So we're not going to see them blitzing a lot of guys and giving him these lanes to create his own running lanes and getting out of the pocket. I think we see more conservative defense where they want to stop the run. They're going to have quarterback spies on Lamar, and they're really going to just be like, okay, we're taking Lamar out. They're going to try to take Lamar out of the game in the fact that, okay, make sure he can't run the football, which is where he's most dangerous, and really try to keep him in the pocket. And like I said before, having aspired to, so when he gets out of the pocket, he can't beat them there.
So to your point, for those that, again, I don't want to patronize anybody, but everybody on the defense, there's one player that gets the mic in their head, right? So they can
Yeah.
communicate with the defensive coordinator. You always want to know who that guy is if you want to understand the game plan. For the Lions, it'll be their middle linebacker. Looks like Thor, Alex
Yeah.
Anzalone, right?
Yeah. Who's been playing out of his mind this year.
And so, to what you're saying, him and Dan Campbell, that's a mirror image. So, Hutchinson's
Mm-hmm.
the best player. He'll have to be accounted for. I feel fairly good, fairly confident with our tackles to protect Lamar. I do think that everything starts, like you said, with, hey, they're going to make Lamar throw the ball. I don't mind that. So, I've been
No.
negative on the game plan changing from the Greg Roman offense. But if I'm being
Mm-hmm.
if I'm being honest, this is the type of game where if you're going to win the Super Bowl, if you're going to beat the best teams, you have to be able to spread it out. I look at the Lions personnel, and their weakest spots are just in their secondary. That's why they don't blitz a
Mhm.
lot. If we're
Yep.
going to beat them, I love what the Seahawks. It's not a surprise, or it's not a surprise. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. That the Seahawks have struggled a lot offensively, but they didn't
Mhm.
struggle against the Lions. If you can, and the Seahawks had they have a ton of weapons. I
Yeah.
would love for the Ravens to come out this game and say, you know what, we are going to put 3, 4 wide receivers out there. Can Likely and Andrews both have snaps at the same time? I just
Yeah.
want. It feels like this would be the perfect game to force the
Mhm.
Lions to play from behind and say, hey, you have to beat us in a shootout, and then maybe that leads to the Lions turning the ball over.
Yeah, actually, it's funny you brought him up. The big guy that I've been saying all week. A lot of people, Zay Flowers gets his first touchdown. Everyone's like, I think it's going to start opening up for him as well. But this just to me screams a classic. Mark Andrews goes for 8 catches, 80 yards, a touchdown. I just think it's really one of those games where the Ravens can spread them out and really take advantage of mismatches that they create in the secondary. Like you said, that's the Lions' biggest struggle on defense. That's why they're not blitzing. They're really relying on guys like Aiden Hutchinson to win matchups to get pressure on the quarterback instead of, okay, we're going to scheme up pressure. So, in that aspect, you're going to need guys like Andrews who are comfortable enough to go out there and find the weak spots in the zone coverage, who can beat one-on-one linebackers and less, you can't rely on OBJ right now, unfortunately, to go out there and be winning, double team battles and stuff. So I think this is a game to me that screams Mark Andrews needs to take over if this offense is going to have a big day.
Right. Lions play from ahead. It was the same. I thought Tampa, it was a good matchup for Tampa last week, but Detroit gets ahead of you. And because they stuff the run and they can get pressure without blitzing, tough matchup. Let's go on the other side of the ball. The best news for the Ravens. And again, we're going to get into the meat of it, because how are the Lions going to be successful? You have to know what the Lions want to do. The Lions, very similar to the Titans last week, it'll be a lot of play action on first down. When you have a quarterback that is limited, you find
Yeah.
his strengths, right? We don't just look at statistics and blurt them out here. That doesn't help anybody. Jared
Yeah.
Goff is terrible on thirds and six and longer. So the Lions are
Mm-hmm.
committed to winning on first down. Sounds, redundant, because every team wants to win on first down, but the Lions won't take. They are, in order for the Ravens to be successful, we don't need it to be 2nd and 5 here, because that's when the whole
Correct.
playbook is open. They'll do a lot of reverses. They got a lot of different things they can do. Here's what I want to focus on. Their left guard did not. Oh, excuse me, I almost fell over. That'd be great. Left guard Jonah Jackson didn't play last week. I can't pronounce their backup's name, but he struggled. Gave up four whatchamacallit, pass rushes. Didn't grade it out fairly as like the one of the worst left guards last
Mm-hmm.
week. He has to start again. To me, that means that they won't be able to run the ball up the middle against us. This is my long way of
Yeah.
saying the only things that the Ravens struggled with last week was stopping Henry on the edge. They have
Yep.
to, that's where the Lions are going to attack. You watch more football, you break it down. Are we going to stuff that run on the edge? Because they will not just run the ball up the middle. They
Yeah. I think another thing is David Montgomery didn't practice so
right.
far this week. So it looks like what they're running with is a limited Craig Reynolds and a limited Jameer Gibbs. So already we already brought up the linemen that are out. Now their bell cow running back is out too. So it is definitely a limited quarterback in Jared Goff, not the situation that the Lions would like to be in, where it's like, okay, none of our running backs are particularly healthy,
Mm-hmm.
especially our bell cow. So I think a guy that man, has been balling out all year for the Ravens. That's going to be key again is Jadeveon Clowney setting the edge. He's just every play he's in the backfield, lined up on the guard. I'm going to say Justin Matabuke, who's just same type of thing. Even on downs where we're not rushing and we're not sending extra pressure, those two are making their own pressure in not only the pass game but the run game. I mean, and that's really where, like you said, this game's going to be won is making Jared Goff beat you on 3rd and 8. It's not okay. It's 3rd and 2. We think we can, out bully them or whatever. We're not. You don't want to get in that game with the Dan Campbell team.
Well, remind me of the Lions offensive coordinator. Do you remember his name off the top of your head?
No, it's not Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson.
So he's probably, I would say,
one of the best offensive minds out there right now, for sure.
Like he'll get a job whether it's next year or the year after. And so that when I look at it, he knows way more than I know. So he knows his left guard's not playing. He knows Pierce is in the middle. He knows Roquan's all over the place. So he's going to spread us out. The Ravens, similar to the Lions, you look at that secondary, you look at the corners. That's where you would attack the Ravens if you are the Lions. Do you think that, again, not a gambling podcast. That's not what you're doing. Yeah. But if you had to look at the pace of the play, do you think the Lions come out? Would you be more surprised, or what do you think is more likely, that they would do a no huddle offense and try to keep our big guys on the field? Or do you think they want to come in here and say, hey, we don't want Lamar on the field. Let's let the play clock go down. How do you see what's Ben Johnson attacking the Ravens here?
Yeah, I think this is going to sound like a cop-out answer. I think it's all going to depend on how they start. I think they start slow, and I think they want to control the clock. But I think they have that second year where,
like, if they said they had a choice, and the way I look at something is like, and this is how a coach thinks. Would the Lions rather be 17-14 or 31-28? Obviously, they want to be 31-0. But assuming it's going to be a close game, are they more comfortable? And so you're saying they can play it both ways. They feel like, hey, we can win either way. But if they had to choose, it would be a lot of 4-yard screen plays.
Yeah, they're going to try to get the ball to their playmakers and make you blow coverages. And I think we talked about the play action and how much they build off that. Sam Laporta, their rookie tight end this year, the number of times that on a play action, suddenly they do a quick, fake play action, bootleg around it. It's like, oh, they toss it to Sam Laporta, who no one is within 45 yards of him. So they are brilliant at getting the defense to commit to their fakes and getting guys out to where they want. I think that's a big thing where guys like Roquan come into play of, okay, it's a chess game there. Of the Lions, like we said, Jared Goff is not going to walk up to the line and one-on-one beat you. They are going to scheme. They're going to have trick plays. They're going to have motions that mean absolutely nothing just to get you slightly off balance to give them the advantage. And that's where a guy like Roquan comes into play, where he can spot that stuff out and limit it.
100%. Game management is the number one thing for the Lions. What do you see? Anything that, I think last week you gave me the backup running back was the Spears on the Titans.
Yeah.
Then he tried to scare us. He just didn't get a ton of touches, but.
Well, yeah, that's what he does is he only gets, I said last week, 6 or 7 touches, and you have to limit the big one. And the whole game I was saying that, I was like, they're doing a great job. And then it gets to the end, and I was like, oh my God, here he goes. And you just watched him weave up and down the field, and I was like, someone please tackle him.
As you go through the Lions depth chart, and we obviously covered their best players, give us somebody that is making you a little nervous. We talked about they do some trick plays. They have some backups in there. For me, their backup, Craig Reynolds, is the goal line guy. The Lions' red zone offense is, the rest of the league is terrible. overall.
Mhm.
The Lions' red zone offense is efficient. Who's making you a little nervous? Who the Ravens got to keep an eye on?
The guy that will probably keep Mike McDonald up is Jamison Williams. Just all the talent in the world. He's been injured, then he had the gambling thing. But this guy, first round pick from Alabama, 2 years ago, is as fast can get. And he's kind of the guy that has added that extra fear into the Lions offense the past game or two. I don't know in the next, over the course of this year, he's going to get more involved. He's going to become a bigger threat. But right now, he's the guy you're afraid of beating you deep. He's the guy that even when he's on the field, he hasn't done much this year. You're terrified because if he gets one step on you, you're done. He's going to the end zone. As long as Jared Goff puts it on him, he's walking in the end zone. So we even talked about this a little last week. Wide receivers with big play speed always just scare me because at any moment they can take off and it's over. So Amon-Ra St. Brown is always going to be their big go-to wide receiver. He's going to get the 8-9 targets a game, 80 yards. But Jamison Williams is that guy who we won't hear from all game, and then in the fourth quarter he catches the 80-yard long ball. So he's the guy that scares me.
Where's your level of confidence? If this game was in Detroit, I think it would be a completely different matchup.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be the fact that the Lions are coming on the road. They played well against Tampa. The way Todd Bowles plays defense is similar, I think, to what we do. Really highly disciplined. I do think it's going to be low scoring. I think it's going to be a battle. Ultimately, putting you on the spot. Are you confident that we come out with the win? How do you see the game playing out?
I'm actually probably more confident than most. I think the Ravens win. I don't want to say easily because the Ravens will find a way to stress us out and never win easily. But I could see this being a 7 to 10 point win by the Ravens. And I think it's going to be the defense. The Ravens defense is, we've sat here and we talked about, making Jared Goff beat you. I think the Ravens have a very good opportunity to get Jared Goff and to take advantage of the Lions, missing pieces on the line. They don't have Montgomery. So it takes a lot away from their offense. So I think we win on defense. I'm not going to say Lamar puts up 31 points, but I could see this being a 21 to 10 game.
All right. I like that. I want to throw one thing at you. So I was trying to think of the right way to phrase this because I was doing a lot of thinking over the weekend, just watching football. And then I guess my friend group has no interest in the Logan Paul, Dylan Dennis nonsense, right? But because I consume so much content, I see how much attention it gets. And it made me start thinking about something when they called the personal foul on Pierce. Okay. So let me just throw something at you. We didn't talk about this. I want to hear your thoughts on it. I think the problem right now with watching football and why it's so difficult to appreciate these defensive games, if you will, because it doesn't have the gladiator feel to it. Like we've gotten to a point in our society where we're now kids. I'd rather watch two people for entertainment fight because we want fights. We want violence. It's a fix that we just want. Some people feel bad about it. Some people think about it. Some people don't feel bad about it. Some people don't think about it. I think it depends on what you do for a living, and how you grew up, and your perspective on it. But regardless, when they take the violence out of football, it is becoming increasingly difficult to consume it without gambling. And you are the perfect person for me to ask this to, because I think you're the only person now in my life that doesn't gamble to watch the games. So I started off by asking you, hey, did you watch the baseball game or the football game last night? I want to hear your perspective when you're watching some of these other games and you don't make any money off of it. It's not part of your job. You're just, hey, I can spend 3 hours. Like, for example, this Dolphins-Eagles game. Like that to me feels like must-see TV. until I watch it, and then I'm like, this game sucks.
Yeah.
Um,
That's unfortunately exactly how I think it's going to happen. I'm so excited for that game just for it to be a dud. But I think you're on a great point. Defense defensive battles aren't the same defensive battles that they were 15 years ago because before it was, oh, these are two hard hitting teams. They're burying the offense. They're
right.
just out physicaling them in every aspect. And now a defensive battle is okay. Both quarterbacks are having awful games just because you can't hit. Like you just,
Right.
it's different types of defensive battles. Like the defensive battles now are more offensive, self-inflicted wounds, and it's not as fun to watch. It's like last night, it's me watching Derek Carr just unable to get on the same page as his wide receivers, and it's like watching 60 minutes of that. Whereas before it was, oh, this is a fun defensive battle because every time a tight end goes across the middle, he catches
Exactly.
a ball, people are getting laid out. Like no, you have to fight for every inch. Whereas now it's like, please, somebody just get a yard.
Yeah, and that's why look, because I've consumed more content the past year than I have in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So I like it's not that I'm interested necessarily in it, but then I understand the appeal. Like for example, all of these there's these accounts on Twitter that have millions and millions of followers that just are fight videos, random
Yeah.
fight videos. I find myself like feeling a little guilty. I'm like, why am I watching this 14-year-old beat up a 60-year-old teacher? But it's like
Yeah.
I understand that's why I freaking watch football as a 12-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
14-year-old too, because there was something about, especially from Baltimore, the only way we
Mm-hmm.
could win. So I remember Tony Banks and Stoney Case and Eric Zier and God, I have PTSD here, Scott Mitchell, all these Ravens quarterbacks where you're like, okay, we have to win 9-6. So it's like the way
Mm-hmm.
we're going to win is we're going to scare the tight end. That's number one. You can't throw the ball to the tight end. He'll be
Yep.
too scared to catch the ball. He's just a blocking tight end. And you won't run the ball up the middle. And it's so, yeah. I don't know if it's definitely not going to change. They added flag
Yeah.
football to the Olympics for 2028. So that is where we're headed. I
Yeah.
just feel like it, so for I guess then I didn't really get I guess the question I want to ask you is will you watch like will you consume these games through highlights or like will you say to yourself, hey, I just rather go do something else for a few hours and I can just spend 10 minutes watching the highlights on the Eagles Dolphins? Like how do you see your how do you see your Sunday
Yeah.
night playing out?
Yeah. I unfortunately the chokehold the NFL has on me, it could be 3-0, and I will sit there and watch the entire game. So that just me. I'm a psycho with that stuff. I just love it too much where it can be a disgusting game. And I'll complain about it the whole time. Don't worry. Like I will say how miserable I am, but the NFL knows they'll have my view the entire time pretty much.
You find yourself on your phone doing other things. It's does
Yeah,
it
it
become
definitely
background?
yeah, it turns into without a doubt. It becomes secondary, which I guess the NFL doesn't care because it gets the viewership, but it is kind of one of those things where a game can turn from the main focus of your night to oh, that's still going on. Like I'll look up and I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize it's the fourth quarter now, and it's like just a horrible game. But in their mind, I guess the average fan turns it off, but they're always going to get the sickos like me, who I'm just like, I'd rather watch football in the background than not have football on in the background.
No, and you know what? It's interesting and I'll see what happens as it evolves. Do you consume basketball as much as you do baseball and football?
I'm more of a highlight guy for basketball. I'll put it on college basketball. I love NBA once it gets more towards the playoffs. I will enjoy watching it. But yeah, those two are more background for me. Baseball and football, if it's on, unfortunately, I'm going to watch it.
No, it's not unfortunate because it's people like you, and that's the reason I wanted to set that up is because the thing I'd like to emphasize every time you come on here, and I want people because as you know, people that listen here, they want to make money betting on sports, and I want to remind them that it's somebody authentic like you who just, even though there's things you don't like about the sport, you're gonna watch it,
Yeah.
you're gonna think
Mhm.
about it, you're gonna give an opinion, you're not selling it. And when someone comes on here and they say, hey, I know who's going to win these games, and they charge you a lot of money for it. It's the complete wrong way to go. Even if you
Yeah.
don't like this conversation that we're having, if you're like, hey, I don't agree with anything they're saying, go
Yeah.
find somebody else to listen to. But don't fall for the guy that I'm 9-3 in my last 12 and I'm gonna my lock of the year. We've all heard it on the radio. It is the worst
Oh,
thing you can do, because Zach and I could sit here for 6 hours and talk about this Rangers Astros game, and then we'll come to the conclusion, excuse me, that after 100 times playing it out, it could go 50-50, right? And
yeah.
that's the case with most of these games, unless you're going to handicap middle school basketball and one team is definitely better than the other. These games are usually, they can just usually go anyway all the time.
Yeah. I mean, hell, we watched the Browns beat the 49ers last week. I mean, especially in the NFL, one team could be way better than the other and they still lose. I mean, it's any given Sunday, especially in sports. Like you said, it's 50-50. You can do all the research in the world and it goes completely different than anyone saw.
I would argue the best way to bet, and this is not the way Jeremy does it, but I would say the best way to bet and to have a real opinion is to live bet. Like sit there and watch the game and submit to the idea that you have no idea what's going to happen before the game starts, but you can watch the game. Maybe you make halftime bets. Maybe you, that's something where I would actually recommend if you have the time to do it, but that becomes a full-time job to sit there and watch everything.
Analyze live games, and then and you have to pay attention to it. So you can't make it background the first half and then try to live bet it, because you still won't have info.
What's your process before we get out of here, so everybody knows how much time you spend with the Ravens after you watch the game? Give me an idea of, like, how do you break it down? What is the first thing you look at after a game? Do you give yourself like 24 hours so you're not emotional?
So if it's a win, I'll usually, just because I'm happy and giddy, I'll rewatch just Ravens highlights. I like immediately just looking at all the highlights of it, and then usually the Monday or Tuesday, I'll rewatch just a condensed version of just the plays in the game, try to see stuff I missed, and then after that is where I'll go through on YouTube and I'll look at guys breaking down certain players, seeing why guys played well, especially if I'm interested in a guy that I saw something and I'm like, I thought he had a great game. I'll see if, one of the ESPN guys is breaking down his film that will know more than me on, playing the position. And that's kind of where I break down. So I start as a whole and I'll break down watch the entire game real time, then kind of condense it and watch it again just to see if there are little things I missed, and then kind of break down position wise after that.
Yeah, you have to, because of the way the camera is during the game. You can't pretend like the worst thing is when you're watching a game with somebody and they start yelling at something. You're like, dude, you didn't even know what the play was. You really can't be emotional about most plays until you watch the film, which sounds like a cop out. It's not the case in baseball and basketball. Like, that's right in front of you. But in football, it's like, hey, I need to know what the design of the play was. So it's important for people to know that you spend a lot of time. This is your goal. This is your life goal, to really make content that helps people understand sports. So I appreciate you coming on here. I watch it. We all love the Ravens, but give me, so you said 21-10 was if you had to give you a final score, right?
Yeah. I'll say Ravens 21-10.
I love it. So go ahead.
I was gonna say, it's just gonna be I think it's a classic Ravens defensive battle with a team, and I think the Ravens kind of pull away with it at the end. I could see us being up 14-10 for a majority of the fourth. It'll be like 14-7 going into halftime, and we'll do the classic Ravens. We won't score for the first quarter and a half of the second half and start completely slow, but hopefully they find a way.
Well, this is awesome. I really enjoy doing this.
Yeah.
So Zach is on Twitter. Zach does it's Zach Bollinger at Zach Bollinger 18, right?
Yep, Zach Bollinger 18 on Twitter, and then you can find all my content there that I produce daily, stuff like that. So
yeah, this is awesome. So I'll see you next week.
Yep. See you next week.
Baseball tonight, Ravens on Sunday. Hopefully Ravens pull it out. Really appreciate you.
Awesome. Pleasure as always.
Everybody have a good weekend.